Good evening, everyone. Welcome to episode 194, and it is our fourth anniversary of Into the Outer Realm. So I think it was actually January 30th. So pretty darn close that Tanya and I launched the show during lockdown from the Creative Cottage here. And here we are at 194 episodes and 4-year anniversary. And it just so happened, it just worked out. There's so much beautiful symmetry, as you're going to find out, between Constance Victoria Briggs' two books here, The Moon's Galactic History and Earth's Galactic History. And she was with me for our third anniversary show. So there's something going on here. So I'm debuting a new haircut tonight. So I wore the in-ear earbuds here, and I'm looking a little, I don't know if it's Cruella DeVille or Harvey Two-Face. I'm not sure what, but there's actually a little more black hair over here, but whatever's happening, I'm letting it happen. I'm so glad that you could be with me. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to tonight, as you can tell. Let me get the branding window up for when I want to roll the opening. I just want to give a quick shout out. You will see in the comments the mistymountainmead.com. Every couple of weeks, I like to give them a plug. My good friend Richard makes this outstanding award-winning mead. He makes it in Virginia. He is the mead meister. And we became friends several years ago. I was doing Angus McGregor the Pirate at a wonderful Renaissance fair out in around Winchester, Virginia. This was probably about 4 years ago. We met, we hit it off. He read Jester Knight, my fantasy novel. And as an homage to Richard, he's so generous, and his wife Margie and his whole crew are just wonderful, terrific. Richard not only became my historian for my pirate books, but I put him as a character in the sequel to Jester Knight, which is coming out in just a couple of weeks. It's called Aldemir's Dilemma. It only took me 14, almost 15 years to write it, but all I can say is it's worth the wait. And as some writers that I really respect say, I could not have written this book before just a couple of years ago. I actually finished it during the pandemic, and then had a bunch of other projects that I was working on. The third book is already outlined, so it may take 2 years. I mean, these are big books, 400 pages or so. They're big stories, but it's outlined. So just a shout out to Richard. You can't do worse. They deliver it right to your door. Orange blossom mead. There's a blackberry. Just wonderful dessert meads. More seriously, this pairs terrific. The Fenrir Spirit with fish. We're gonna have it with some steak and shrimp on Saturday night. A little date, my bride and I, and some Cary Grant movies. But we got a lot to cover tonight, so I'm gonna stop right now with all of this. Welcome to all of you. Let's roll the opening. When we come back, I'm gonna read Constance's bio, which is long, but she's earned it. So I am reading it, and then we're going to talk to her about, I know you were also thrilled when she was on talking about her moon encyclopedia, then the moon's galactic history. Tonight, we're going to focus on Earth's galactic history in this age of disclosure, and ask her what she makes of all this disclosure, because she has her thumb on the pulse of all this. So welcome. I'm happy to be here, and I'm glad you're here.
There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon. The preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts, because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey
Into the outer realms.
All right, chat room's keeping me busy tonight. Everybody is excited, and Constance's reputation, of course, precedes her, not only from this show, being on 2 times prior, but from Coast to Coast and Three Beards podcast and so many other great programs. So I'm going to try to put on my radio voice here and read this bio and read it flawlessly. Constance Victoria Briggs is an author, researcher, and public speaker, specializing in cosmic mysteries, including galactic and moon mysteries, ancient astronauts, extraterrestrials, angels, and the unseen world. She's the author of Earth's Galactic History and its Extraterrestrial Connection, The Moon's Galactic History, a look at the moon's extraterrestrial past and its connection to Earth, as well as the Encyclopedia of Moon Mystery, Secrets, Conspiracy Theories, Anomalies, Extraterrestrials, and more, much, much more. I lost my place. I was doing so well. Much more. Encyclopedia of the Unseen World, The Ultimate Guide to Apparitions, Deathbed Visions, Mediums, Shadow People, Wandering Spirits, and much, much more. Encyclopedia of God, an A to Z guide to thoughts, ideas, and beliefs about God. The Encyclopedia of Angels, an A to Z guide with nearly 4,000 entries. Briggs is a regular guest on numerous radio shows, podcasts, and YouTube, including Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie, the Leap Project, Earth Ancients Into the Outer Realms. Thank her immensely for including us in this crowd. Broadcast Team Alpha, Forbidden Knowledge, and Spaced Out Radio. Briggs has also been featured in Shadows of Your Mind magazine and UNX magazine. Briggs has been a speaker at Total Disclosure, Inner Truth Summit, and Watchers Talk Humanity Unplugged Conference. Briggs will also be featured on the Woman on the Fringe anthology due out spring 2024. It is Briggs' goal to investigate the mysteries of the universe and how they connect to humanity. Ladies and gentlemen, for the 3rd time, and to help us celebrate our 4th anniversary, Constance Victoria Briggs. Welcome.
Joey, thank you for reading all of that. I told you to cut it down.
Well, no, you've earned it. So slow down and don't do so much. That's my answer. But a very, very close friend of mine and our mentor for over 10 years, Rosemary Allen Galley, who we talk about so much on the show, she wrote encyclopedias, right? Yeah. Angels, you both, and what makes someone, and I'm a pretty prolific writer, but an encyclopedia I don't think is in my wheelhouse. So what made you decide to write encyclopedias?
Okay, two things. I wanted people to have easy reference guides to these topics instead of having to read, 50 books or 25, whatever, on a subject. If they had one question, for example, maybe they wanted to learn about the light. In the unseen world, I wrote about the light. What happens when you go into the light, Or if they wanted to know how their relatives and friends that had crossed over might try to contact them, they could look under afterlife communication and get an article. So that was one reason. The other reason is kind of cheating. I thought, because I was raising toddlers when I started this process, that it might be a little bit easier than getting into narratives, and I do that a little bit later. Well, guess what? No, it wasn't. I learned that the hard way.
Yeah, so all these encyclopedias, 4,000 entries, just that you and I met because you, and folks, I have to tell you, if you are a writer, self-published, or Constance is not, she has very impressive publishers. Her publisher for these 2 books is Adventures Unlimited Press, which is David Childress, one of the main forces behind Ancient Aliens, which has been on, for over a decade now. She reached out to me and said, I have this book. Would you consider having me on your show? So you all need to get out there and be pounding the pavement. I don't want to hear nobody reads my books. My books aren't selling. I can't get on shows. I can't do this. I can't do that. It's very impressive. And she opened the door to get on George Norrie's Coast to Coast program, which Tanya and I we're not able to do, even with Rosemary putting in a good word for us. But we were on with Richard Syra. And have you ever been on any of Richard's shows, Constance?
No, but I've seen them. I haven't been on. I think he's great.
He is. He's wonderful. He's terrific. So you might want to reach out to him. Tell him Joey sent you.
Okay, all right.
But so anyway, so we have so much to talk about tonight because it really struck me, and I do reviews for your books. I do big 2-page reviews, and still can't cover half of the information that's in there, but just whet people's appetites. And you really write like it's a PhD dissertation or it's a newspaper article. So you start very broad, and this happens, folks. Books, like any work of art, are sort of like holograms. They're almost like fractals. So each chapter has the same structure as the larger book, and you do that so well. What is your background? Do you have formal training as a writer, as a journalist, as a researcher?
I do not. I
Wow.
do not. Well, I'll tell you, I didn't train. I did do some reporting for a small town paper when I was younger. Maybe that had something to do with it. But that was pretty much something that they gave me free reign creatively and as far as formatting. So yeah, no, not much training, just kind of thrown out there to
No.
do that.
Far from throwing it
Thank
out.
you.
That is so impressive. It also makes the case, folks, as I often say about like directing and filmmaking, and Robert Rodriguez says, and David Mamet says, just go out and do acting, directing, filmmaking, writing. They're verbs. Go out and do them. But wow, you just have a knack. And that makes it all the more impressive. It makes me think your work is really there, and I'm sure that our audience, because I reference their books all the time, you really make me think of Dr. Michael Sala, Paul Blake Smith. Paul Blake Nelson. Sorry, not the actor, the writer. Those are my go-to writers for what went on in the White House and what did Eisenhower know, and what did those kinds of in the Beltway disclosure things. When it comes to Galactic, you are my go-to now.
Oh my God, Joey.
No, seriously,
No,
true.
no
And
pressure here, Joey. My God.
the audience knows that I blow no smoke. It's genuine. And so I mentioned your publisher on Ancient Aliens, and I said in the review, you're sort of the Joe Friday of the bunch, just the facts.
Mm.
And you walk this wonderful line between here's the data. I know it sounds incredible. I know this is hard to believe, but
Yeah.
this is the data. This is the evidence. But you have great hope about what might be coming and contact. And you and I don't share that. I almost think like humanity's not worthy of ever getting mass
Oh.
conflict, which is probably a little selfish. I've had a little personal contact, whatever. But let's just jump right to that before we get into the meat of the book. So here we are in this age of disclosure.
Mhm.
So we have David Grush, and we have Tim Burchett and Matt Getz, no matter what you think of him, trying to push this information forward. Then we have Sean Kirkpatrick at Arrow going, nothing to see. Like, we've poured through data. There's no evidence here. I'm not going to name names of the guys that I think are company people and shills and operatives and all that. Where do you think we're at? Do you think a revelation is coming from the government, or like the whistleblower that goes, oh no, here's the evidence that we really wanted? Or do you think it's going to come from the ETs where they go, look, we can't wait any longer. You all have your finger on the trigger. Or do you think it's maybe so far away?
So I think it's near. And when I say near, I don't know how many years, but I think maybe hopefully within our lifetime, but maybe, I'd say, let's say 50. Just throw that out there. I think
Okay.
it's coming sooner than later. And it looks like from what, we're seeing in the skies today, things are escalating. That's why I'm saying that. You're hearing more stories of strange things in the sky. You're hearing more stories of UFOs, UAPs, more stories of people who are claiming to make contact, stories of people that, and some leaders that, I've listed, given in my book that said they've gone on space rights, they've met extraterrestrials. So people are being visited, you know, individually. It is happening, and I think sooner than later, we're going to have mass contact. That's just my opinion. Things seem to have stepped up. Now, yeah, I would like to see that before I leave this lifetime, but who knows? But so that's where I think we are. I also think that people are accusing the government of hiding things, and yeah, they probably are. They may have information, like the gentleman went before Congress and said, I believe that they do have information. I believe that they do have ships that they have reverse engineered or that crash land and they're studying or what have you. I think that's a thing, but I don't think that's all of it. My book goes back to, throughout history. I'm trying to tell people, educate people, let them know that the UFO extraterrestrial phenomena is not something new. It goes back to the beginning. So they've always been there. So what we have today, as far as, the government and the military, is something new, and that they're saying they have these ships. Okay, they've got it. They may or may not let us know, but I don't think that they are in control of all the information.
Yeah.
All right. I think if you've got intelligences out there that are able to send people interdimensionally or across the universe via what I call the cosmic freeway, wormholes, portals, stargates, what have you. If you've got beings at that level, we don't need the governments of Earth to let us know. I believe that they are controlling some of it. They're controlling the information that we get. And they will make the decision in the end when we will be contacted as a global community and let know that they exist. There was a gentleman a couple of years ago. I think his name was he was an Israeli general.
Oh,
and
yes.
I believe that the last name is Eshed, right? Mr. Eshed, I think. And he said, he's old, he's rich, he's decorated, he has everything he needs, and he's going to say what he wants, basically. And one of the things he came forward to when he was talking about a book that he had written, and he said in the book, we have people on the moon. We have people not on the moon, on Mars, that are working with extraterrestrials and a organization referred to as the Galactic Federation. And I remember being in my house, in my kitchen, and I had the news going, and I trolled around when I heard Galactic Federation coming off the television. And I was shocked, and I told my family, they just outed the Galactic Federation. But what he went on to say is that the Galactic Federation said that humanity is not ready to know that they exist. We're not ready. So I think they're going to decide when we're ready to know more information. I think that they have an agenda. And I think part of that, what we're seeing in the skies today, is part of that. They're trying to let us know a little at a time. They're trying to let us know through science fiction, even. They're looking for various avenues to kind of give us this information, but not, just throw it at us, because I don't think they're allowed to do that. And then at some point, they will make the announcement. I don't think they're going to wait on our world leaders. And I'll tell you something else, Joey, if you don't mind my talking so much about this. But there is a gentleman named Alex Collier. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He is a Andromedon ambassador. All right, I talk about him in my book, and he is a fascinating man to listen to. And he talks all about these beings and their peaceful life, and that they want peace in the galaxy, and they're worried about us and our nuclear ambitions and our warring. And they basically said to him that humanity needs to grow up. And if we don't grow up and stop what we're doing to the earth, and as far as the atomic bomb, atomic weapons, that they're going to have to step in, and that we're going to have to face consequences. And that at some point, they just may have to let us know before we were supposed to know that we are a part of a galactic community. So we may be even pushing the agenda with our behavior here on Earth, that they may one day have to just say, okay, you've got to stop it. We're here, and step in.
Right. And yeah, I agree with you on all of that. Those are some of my favorite parts in the book, where you lay out the different races. There were some races I had never heard of, so that was wonderful. I was highly educated on some of them. But these federations, the Council of Nine has come up. Rosemary had channeled the Council of Nine. Tanya has channeled the Council of Nine, and knew nothing about that. It was just, they're saying they're the Council of Nine. So these intelligences do seem to be out there. Three Beards podcast had a gentleman on their show last night, and he was referring constantly to the Federation, the Federation, the Federation. So for me as a researcher, the more different people are talking about this from different walks of life, but using the same terms, I really pay attention to that. I've come to term it now, the monkeys have guns. So when that Trinity test went up and everybody's talking about it again, thanks to Chris Nolan and Oppenheimer, that may have done damage. That may have opened up rifts, that those nuclear explosions certainly seem to get the attention, which you talk about. We're going to talk about Star Trek. You talk about that. That's how first contact happens, right? The Vulcans go, ooh, something's going on here. They've achieved warp. We have to go in. Here's my next question for you. It's a little off script. You hint around in the book, but don't name names. What's your position on Eisenhower in 54 meeting at Edwards and signing a formal treaty of cooperation?
What's my position? Do I believe it or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I believe it happened. And, the story that I got was that he said no to us. The ETs wanted us to put down our weaponry.
Yeah.
And they said they would give us technology, and they were told no. Because I don't know if any country wants to say, okay, we're not going to have any defense.
Right.
I think that's where the president was coming from. I believe it happened. Now, if you're talking about the treaty with the Greys, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, they call it the Greada Treaty, Greada.
Yeah. I don't have a lot to say about it, except I hope it didn't happen.
Yeah.
You're talking about the abductions.
The trading.
That's just one of the worst stories that I've heard. And I'm hoping that it isn't true. I can't imagine that they would have agreed to it, except for this. Why would they agree to it? I've heard because they didn't have any choice. They could either say yes, okay, take this many people, or they could say no, and then they just cut loose and did whatever they wanted to. If the story about the Greys are true, they didn't have a lot of choices.
No, I believe Eisenhower was a good man. He tried to warn us about the military-industrial complex. He did more than try. He said, look, the government has been co-opted. Be careful. But if they were so advanced and we really didn't feel like we had a choice, we could move on for that. Thank you. I ask you because I respect you so much as a researcher. Your opinion, I think, matters more to me than some other people's opinions. So while I have you here, I asked, let's see, what are we gonna do? So you open with hollow inner earth, and you make it sound so rational and plausible. That's what I love, because we do hear things about tests that show that there are these pockets and all. Um, how how did you decide to make that the lead off? Because that's like a hot button.
I love the idea of the hollow earth, and their cities being beneath our feet. I think it's amazing and fascinating and not so unreasonable. So when I found evidence of scientists that had come forward and said, we found all of this water, under the surface, of the earth, and it goes down 410 miles, and we've found evidence of mountains and plains and valleys. I went, oh my God. And then when I was talking about it to one of my relatives, and they were like, there's just no way. There's no way someone's down there. And I'm like, the scientists are saying this. There's more water under the earth than there are on the earth's surface. And where there's water, there's life, right? That not only that, but so we've got it kind of mapped out from the scientists. If you look at my book, it talks about it, pretty good. And then they've got the whole idea that there's a kind of sun, not a real, not like this our sun, but a heat source down there. So it is a thing. It's been talked about from the beginning of time, practically, that there's something going on. And then, there's a lot of openings. People don't know this, but there are openings, 350 of them, they've counted, people doing this research around Earth, that lead down deep into the Earth. And there was one place in Vietnam that looks like it's a caverns beneath the earth, and it's got its own lake and its own ecosystem, and they found pearls there and all kinds it's like a world unto itself, and it's something that actually we can visit, but we're saying that there's more of that deeper down inside of the earth. But there are people that have said they have visited the hollow earth. And when I talk about all of this information about extraterrestrials, the hollow earth, and other stuff we will get into, people, skeptics will go, oh, they're making it up. They're telling stories. But you know what, guys? If only one of those stories is true, then it's real, right? It doesn't take all of them to be real. So we have a gentleman by the name of Admiral Richard Byrd. I'm sure many in your audience know of him and have heard of him, but I use him as my example because he was a military man. He was a decorated military man who was well respected, well known. The government thought highly of him, and he went on an expedition, and he came back and he told them, this is what I found. I visited a city beneath the earth, and this is what it looked like. It was like a crystal city. And I talked to these people, and they said they had these beings that were humanoid, human. And they said they've been down there for ages, and they've been down there through Earth's calamities. When, we died, humans died off the earth and came back, we helped them put the pieces back together. They were a very old and ancient race that were not interrupted in their timeline as humanity has been on the surface because of disasters. So if you can't trust someone who is decorated and trusted by our government and so well thought of, then, who can we trust? And at some point, we just have to draw the line and say, you know what? We like the guy. We trusted the guy. He wasn't crazy. We sent him out there. So Richard Byrd came back with this information, and I, for one, believe him. There are cities beneath the earth. There are caverns that go on for miles and miles and miles that we could wander through and eventually end up there. The problem with this, what's problematic, is that today we are seeing strange creatures And I think that maybe they may be wandering out of the hollow earth. And, um, some of them, there are good and bad on the surface. And I think, we have to kind of be cautious when we talk about traveling and going down there and, looking at things, because there have been some nefarious looking creatures. I mean, they've come across reptilians. I mean, in that one cavern out of Vietnam, they said they ran into reptilian beings in that one. So I think we have to go cautiously. But long story short, yes, there are cities. I think we have a hollow earth. I think there are beings down there. And I think that there are kind of an animal life down there too, that sometimes may even be venturing to the surface. So.
That's terrific. Tanya says, I've had dreams where I've been taken down into the earth and there were cities and civilizations there. We have H. Rider Haggard, we have Edgar Rice Burroughs, we have Arthur Conan Doyle, all wrote these adventure stories in the late 1800s about journeying to the center of the earth. I think these guys were tapped in to certain things. It wasn't just, oh, I have this, I'm a writer. And yeah, we get these great, fantastic ideas. There's that. There was Admiral Byrd, of course, yes. And there were others adventurers and explorers, and it ties into Antarctica, what might be below the ice there. Also, a sort of a self-contained power plant that there seems to be evidence of. So let's go from there. Let's build a tapestry kind of the way you do. Underwater bases, right? So we have, the ones we supposedly create, but you have things coming out of the ground at Dulce and over at in Australia, there's the base there where things are supposedly coming out of the ground. And we've seen some very compelling footage of UAPs going into the water, coming out of the water. Ingo Swann remote viewed a saucer coming down and taking water up from a lake, going into the lake. It all seems to be part of the same, it seems to point in the same direction. Is that your feeling?
Yes, it points in the same direction. There's something down there. There's someone down there. And I have to tell you, these are not all the same beings.
Right.
Okay? All right. So you've got some extraterrestrials in the hollow earth that may have come here from another planet or interdimensionally, whoever they are, or intraterrestrials that have been down there, and were kind of alien to us because they're from the earth. But then you've got, and this is one of my favorite subjects too. I just adore the whole idea of beings in the ocean. I don't know why. I'm just fascinated with that. So we've got others that are in the oceans. And in my book, I was trying to show that extraterrestrials have touched every corner of this planet, including the waters. So I tell the story in my book of a woman who had come forward in social media, and she did give her name and the place that she was working, which I don't say when I'm talking about this story, but she basically told a story of looking at beached whales. She worked for an ocean a company that looked into the things going on in the ocean. And she was sent with her team to look at beached whales. And when they were looking at the whales, they found that there had been parts of the whales cut out that looked like cylinders of meat were taken from these whales. Someone was eating whale meat, it looked like. And she said that it looked like the whales had been cut open with a laser kind of weapon used on them to do this. So they were alarmed, and they called in special equipment to look at go as deep as they could to look to see what was going down there. And what was found were beings. And these beings they watched for a few days. They said they weren't like mermaids. These were not mermaids from our stories on Earth, which I love those stories, but this was not it. These guys, she said, didn't swim like we do or fish do. They moved very quickly. They were long, tall, humanoid. They all looked alike. Their outfits looked like they were moving, their suits, and they had weapons, and they even fired on the submersible that had the cameras because, either maybe they didn't like being watched. I don't know. But whomever is down there could have come from elsewhere and made a home there. They could have been there since the beginning of humanity, you know, and come, at that time. I think a lot of ETs came in here in the beginning, but that's another part. But anyway, who are these beings down there? She also said that they found habitats down there, and she said that these beings are in other areas of the world, and as are other habitats. Now, when I look at this, I'm looking at also because this was not Russia, but I'm looking at that Russian story. It's a very famous one. Your audience may know about it as well as yourself, Joey. The Russians who were in the Russian Navy and they went to train in the waters, deep waters, and they came across humanoid beings. They said they were extraterrestrials, and they quickly got out, and they went back and they reported to their superior what they had seen, these beings in the water. And the superior said to go and capture them or get one of them or whatever. They went back trying to follow orders. And so they found them again. They tried to catch one of them, and they were fired upon. And 2 of them died and 3 of them came back injured. Now, this was information in a declassified Russian document, because they declassified their UFO files and their USO files. And they said that half of their information on UFOs dealt with water. But I believe them. I mean, here's another story. It's coming from the Russians. They're not going to be lying, right? In their own declassified files. Right. Could it be the same beings that this woman was talking about? All right. And then I was saying, it occurred to me on a show the other day, as I was talking, the Dogon tribe. We know that they came. That's another, kind of famous story. And we know that they came from the stars. They came from Sirius, the Sirius area, and they gave information to a primitive tribe. We know that. They gave them all of this information about our galaxy. And it was written down, and we have their stories. But the question is, we know that the Nomos, that's the name of the beings that approached this tribe, we know they came in. We have writings about how the ship looked and what happened when they were landing and all of this, and that they were amphibious and that they could live on the land or earth. But my question is, could these beings be those same beings? Could they be the Nomos? Did they leave? Are they still here? That's what I'd like to know. Yeah. So someone is down there. And the other thing is, it is thought that they are living in our deepest waters because they may be avoiding humanity. Maybe they're watching us. Maybe they're mining the oceans. Maybe they needed a place to live and they had the technology to be able to do so in the waters, and they're there for that reason, and they're avoiding us, and they know we can't get down there, right? But so far to check them out. So that may be why they're there. Also, can I just say quickly, Joy, that there was one person who went on a ride in a UFO, and the UFO went into the ocean and then into a cavern. And he said when they got out, he visited a city. So there may be caverns within the ocean that also lead into somehow the inner earth.
Yeah, so it is maybe literally connected, but the pieces start to fall in place, and that's the best that we can do as researchers. So you take us around the world several times in the book, which I absolutely love, looking at different major topics. So I'm going to give you some choices, and you pick the one to talk about in a little bit of detail. There's the Great Pyramid of Giza, there's Stonehenge, there's the Nazca lines, and there's the Gate of the Sun in Bolivia. Pick one of those and share with the audience how this provides data indicating the thesis that the ETs have been here for a long time and been in contact with us.
Oh, good golly. I really love the Sun Gate.
Yeah, me too.
So this is a artifact that is standing in Bolivia, and it was a part of a sort of a planetarium, or the area where they studied astronomy. And so this gate, which is big and heavy and weighs tons, has symbols written on it talking about the stars and the moon, and it shares information that I don't know if it was something they were studying or something they wanted us to know in the future, or both, but we know that the information it contained was not information that they should have known. And one of them I talk about in my moon, I talk about it in my moon book, because they were saying how the moon was brought
Yeah.
into Earth's vicinity, and it caused problems and storms and things. So I believe that a lot of the ancient peoples around the globe were visited by star beings, and the information says so. Around, cultures around the world said they were visited by star beings that were given information. And I believe that these people were one of them, whoever it was that was writing on the Sun Gate doing astronomy there at that time. I believe that they were visited and given this information. Or else they wouldn't know it. And I don't believe they were writing graffiti and playing a hoax, right?
No, right. That's what people go. They go, either it's a misinterpretation, or it was a hoax, or it was graffiti, or that it was some kind of psychedelic trip. That, thank goodness for Graham Hancock, who went, yeah, there were these psychedelic trips, but they parallel with alien abduction and contact. They parallel with things like the gate in Bolivia. He did a terrific job of taking all that stuff and going, wait a minute. Even if they were getting high on these, peyotes and so forth, don't discount it, because the stories closely parallel. So you take us around the world again, and you look at all these wonderful artifacts that shouldn't be here, or don't have explanation, or they don't fit with the fossil record or with the cultural record. So again, I'll give you some choices. You tell us just a tiny bit about the one that you think is the most fascinating, or whatever. So there's the London hammer, there's the drill bit relic, there's the Coso relic, and then the Altanin antenna in Antarctica. They're each equally fascinating, but is there one that you go, whoa, this is the one that really makes me go, whoa, what?
Yeah, the antenna. The
Yeah.
antenna in the ocean, standing there like an antenna. Like an
Very
antenna
clearly, like they're getting cable.
that someone clearly put there. And they've looked at all of these scenarios as to what this thing can be, and nobody can figure it out. We just talked about there being beings in the ocean, and we haven't looked at all of the oceans, right? We've
Right.
we've visited more of the moon than we have our own ocean. So who knows how many more antenna looking items are on the ocean floor. The theory is that they may be communicating with extraterrestrials off Earth via this antenna. They've tried to liken it to plants in the nearby area, but they've discounted it. Nobody knows what the heck this thing is. And, I guess it's too far down for them to go down there and pull it up. But they do have pictures of it. And they think the theory is that it is being used to communicate with extraterrestrials off Earth somehow. When we think of extraterrestrials, people tend to be very limited in their thinking of about their abilities. If we're talking about extraterrestrials that are been in existence for millions and billions of years, who knows what kind of technology they have and what they're capable of doing. You've got the USOs that we've been seeing. I've even got excuse me, Christopher Columbus is even in my book talking about seeing USOs. He called them stars or lights, going into the ocean. We've seen our Navy has picked them up on radar, under the oceans. Who knows what they're putting down there to
Yeah.
communicate? So the antenna is one I feel that really makes you think about, what's going on and what they're capable of. And they could be mining the ocean also. Did I say this for resources too?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I want to mention Egypt just for a moment.
Please.
So ancient Egypt appears to me to have been at least the one city that may have been created by extraterrestrials. Now, we know that from the research, extraterrestrials visited humans all over the earth and gave them information. But this city was something else. This city, when you look at the research from there, you're talking about beings, in their drawings that looked like them, but they were very tall.
Yeah.
We've all heard about the giants of Earth. It's obvious to me that some of these were in extraterrestrials, you know, in my book have said they're always, most of the time, except the grays are really tall. So we've got artifacts from them of these really tall beings. We've got them with the long skulls. Egypt, I believe, was based on an extraterrestrial idea. Of course, we know about the how strange the pyramids are. I believe that they were created via teleportation. You
Mhm.
know, and that kind of thing. It was ETs in that city. The beings that we see in the gods, I believe, like the bird, what forget his name, Horus, the bird-like being. Um, I believe that there were extraterrestrials that were humanoid but resembled, some of the creatures that we've seen in the Egyptian uh, gods. You
Right.
know, So, and Egypt was lit up. Egypt, it looks like they had electricity.
Yeah.
All right. It was not what we think of when we think of Egypt today, a dried place of dull, it's just dull, dried place. This was a lit place. It was a happening, beautiful place. And I think it was extraterrestrial created. I mean, look how different it was. But with that said, I just want to say quickly that all of the cultures of the world talk about star beings coming in and helping. But what I find really interesting is that even though humans were living among extraterrestrials and being shown how to have a good life on earth and agriculture and cleanliness and all of this stuff in the beginning, at some point they left. They decided to leave and not be as open, and I wonder if that came from a hierarchy. Was that a decision someone made somewhere that said leave them alone, let them progress on their own, stop showing yourselves to the masses? Because they were here. We have all the evidence. Where'd they go? Why don't they show themselves anymore? I think someone out there made a decision.
That's interesting. I was talking to somebody today, and they said they believe that there were multiple civilizations that rose up here. So Atlantis seems to be the biggest idea of that. So there seemed to be this pattern where humanoid beings on the planet progress to a certain level, and we hear this from channelers like Bashar and so far too, that this happened throughout the galaxy. I believe there's evidence on Mars of nuclear activity. It looks like things were blown up and all. Very, very ancient vitrified glass,
Yeah,
right? Which is from
on the
yeah.
moon.
So I think I absolutely think that you're right as far as I go. But do you believe in that we, like Graham Hancock and others say, that there were civilizations that kind of stacked on each other, seem to always reach this threshold where we are now, where they blow themselves up?
Yeah, it looks like we've had to start over several times. And Plato talked about that. Uh, he was saying, the name of his relative. is escaping me now. I'm sorry, audience. But so when Plato talked about talked about he was saying that the Greeks didn't know their history, basically. All right. And that his relative had, it's right on the tip of my tongue, had visited Egypt. Like, I think it was like a thousand years before Plato even got, got his story and of Atlantis. And anyway, his relative visited Egypt. He talked to Egyptian priests, and the priest had a library. All right, and the libraries in the writings that his relative talked about, he stated that the priest said, "You don't know your history. Your people don't know your history. That there have been disasters on the earth. That we have in our writings that talked about our writings survived because in the area that we were, they were not touched. There was no, the disasters didn't touch us, but those guys further out had to start over. The Grecians had to start over, and others had to start over. So basically, Plato told this story, and yeah, I believe him.
Yeah, I do too.
I'm trying to remember all the details. I apologize, I can't.
No, that was perfect. And folks, you need to read the books. I mean, our time together is going to go, and we're maybe touching on 15%, but we're really going in depth on only a couple percent. They are it's full of data, which is terrific. So let's go into something. I sort of have a master plan for this last segment here. Let's talk about because here's why I want to talk about this. I think it's really important because people go, "Oh, nobody has the technology and the speed of light and these barriers and all this." And it's silly. But let's talk about stargates, wormholes, and portals because they seem to be a thing that NASA is mapping and saying, "Look, guys, these are real."
That's right. So if you can't believe them, they're talking about it. It's on the website. If you can't believe them talking about it, then who are we supposed to believe? All right. That's not something they have to make up and talk about. People talk about how they're trying to hide things, apparently not. All things are hidden. Anyway, so they talk about a time in the future that we may have the technology to use wormholes for traveling the galaxy and the outer universe and all of this. Now, scientists do talk about how difficult that is, how expensive it is, how we don't understand it, but it is a thing that they're talking about, just like they're talking about colonizing outer space. So what happens is, when you think of extraterrestrials, we've got our technology, and then you've got beings who are hundreds of years ahead, thousands of years ahead, millions of years ahead, billions of years ahead, right?
Yeah.
And some that are behind us that are just getting started. The galaxy is full of life, I believe, right? So for those that are so far ahead of us, it looks like, in my opinion, they beat us to the idea, the idea that we want to travel and colonize. Someone has already done it, and we actually may be the result of someone doing it. So someone out there, because our scientists say there's no way anyone can be visiting us, not all scientists, some scientists, because of the vast distances. It takes thousands and thousands and thousands of years to come across to anywhere to get to Earth. But not if they have the technology that we're already looking into of using wormholes and stargates. The stargates, of course, being on each end of the wormhole, traversing it and bending time and all of this and space. And someone knows how to do it. And that's how they're traveling, in my opinion. And it's interesting because, we had a sci-fi show called Stargate. So if you ever watched it, you kind of get an idea of how it was done. And it's not just a modern era suggestion. We've been talking about Stargates for throughout history. The ancients talked about people coming and going through these doors. Some of the doors were invisible. Some of the doors were literally doors that they said would dissipate. The salt would solid, but you could go through it, and then it would come back. And they said people were walking through them. So apparently you can walk through a wormhole or Stargate too. You don't have to take a ship. You can send things across, but they documented these things in ancient times. People were talking about it. There have been people who have looked into, excuse me, Stargate sites and in our modern era and have disappeared and then
Yeah.
showed up somewhere else.
Yep.
So that's how I think that extraterrestrials are traversing the universe. And that's how they're visiting us. And they're, also, of course, we talked about rips and tears. I do think that there are some rips and tears out there and things are coming through that shouldn't be coming through because of what we did,
Right.
with splitting the atom, basically. So, yeah, I think that is a thing. And I think that's how they're doing it. And I think that someone out there, or more than one, has the technology. They beat us to it. And I also think that the galactic hierarchies, that someone is in charge of them. I don't think that just looking at the governments in order that we try to have on Earth, I'm sure that out there, they've got someone in charge of that kind of thing and monitoring who's coming and who's going. I also believe, excuse me, I'm losing my voice, pardon me. I believe that Earth is also being protected by beings out there, or we would have been done away. Some of the asteroids, I've heard of asteroids being pushed out of the way of Earth. I've heard of, and you have too, Joy, atomic bombs being disarmed.
Yeah.
Who knows what else is going on? Because we don't have the capability of protecting ourselves, of defending ourselves from, beings out there that may have other plans for Earth. I do believe we have guardians in this galaxy that are looking out for any race that can't defend themselves yet. So that's just my thought.
No, it's an important thought. So, guys, when you read the book, I mean, some of these stargates and portals, Antarctica, because we've done it on the show, talked about it a lot. But in Turkey, Sedona, Arizona, everybody talks about the vortexes and all of that. Sri Lanka, and just real quick, because we're almost up of an hour, but at the bottom of Lake Michigan, there is this 12,000-year-old Stonehenge-like structure, 40 feet below the surface. That's really hard to explain. Is like, forget it being a random rock formation or anything like that. Looks like Stonehenge, and yet it's 40 feet below the surface in the middle of Lake Michigan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks like Stonehenge, which says what? Stonehenge could have been a possible portal. This thing is believed to be a portal.
I believe so. Just like there was this theory always going back to Egypt. Oh, and it's very fantastical, but the original Stargate movie really tackles that idea of Egypt and those population centers being of extraterrestrial origin.
Yeah.
Oh.
You know what? We were going to talk about Star Trek for a second, really quickly. I really do believe that, and I've heard that this was actually a part of an agreement too, that we would be educated, and that part of it, it was a way to use science fiction to help humanity understand that we're not alone in the galaxy or the universe. I really believe that extraterrestrials are using, these shows like Star Trek and Stargate, but especially Star Trek is my favorite because of the story of Gene Roddenberry. Gene Roddenberry is known to have sat in on channeling sessions with a woman who was channeling extraterrestrials. I've heard that it was the Ashtar Command on one story, and then I've heard Galactic Federation, and they may be one and the same or one and a part of both. I'm very fond of the Ashtar Command, though. But anyway, Gene Roddenberry was said to have been sitting in on these sessions, and the idea is that, so these beings said they were traveling the galaxy on peaceful missions, and they were a crew of different races of beings throughout the galaxy working together, and that they were in Earth's vicinity, and that they were, they were here to help. So that's what Gene Roddenberry got from those sessions, and it's thought that Star Trek was created from those sessions, and some of the scripts were ideas that he got from those sessions. And what's interesting is if you look at the Star Trek insignia, it
Yeah.
looks like that they were here. It looks like the letter A. I
Uh-huh.
would say, oh, okay, that looks like an A for Ashtar Command. Isn't that something?
Oh, wow. That
Oh,
is really cool. Do you think that the Prime Directive was a product of those sessions as well?
yes, I do. I think that the Prime Directive, yes, is a product of those sessions. I think that they are using that for us in other worlds. And so they're only going but so far. And that may be why they pulled out. Because, like I said, in the ancient past, there were extraterrestrials walking around openly. I think they pulled out to let us progress on our own. And they're just waiting. They're waiting for humanity to mature. And then they will step in.
I think people like you and I are waiting for humanity to mature too, and certainly the audience, because we seem
Yeah.
lately to be going into a level of insanity,
Uh-huh.
global insanity,
Yeah.
that is the opposite direction. So we have reached our hour, and your voice is getting tired because the book is so popular and you're so popular. You're doing the circuit, which is wonderful. So people who don't know who you are, and I think that's less and less people all the time, certainly in the outer realms. Where can they follow you, keep up with your work, and get these books and the Moon Encyclopedia and all?
Yeah, so I just want to say really quickly, I'm trying to get this message out there. This is great for especially newbies who are trying to find somewhere to start in this knowledge and in this information. But you can
Right.
get it on Amazon. All my books are on Amazon, and you can find me right now on Facebook, Constance Victoria Briggs. And I've got to get back up on TikTok. I had to take an Instagram. I had to take them down temporarily, but I'll be back. Oh, my website is constancevictoriabriggs.com. You can email me through there.
Okay. If you say you can't talk about it, just say I can't talk about it. But was it TikTok's decision or your decision
Oh,
for
mine.
you to?
Mine. I
Oh,
just need to
good.
do some reorganizing. That's all.
Oh, good. Okay. So there you go. And there's one more thing that I wanted to. Oh, you're always very good about not giving too much information about what your next project is. But is there a next project? And tell us as much or a little as you want about it.
Ah, okay. Yeah, there is another project,
Yes.
and it's I couldn't get all the information in this book, so it's kind of it's very similar with different information. That's all I'm going to say.
All right, that's great. Well, if you can get it done and publish and give me time to review it, I would love to have you join me on my 5th anniversary episode,
Uh, yeah,
end of
happy
January, beginning of
anniversary.
February next year.
Thank you. Happy anniversary, by the way.
Thank you. So I'm gonna release you. Go rest your voice. Keep doing what you're doing. Happy to support you any way you can, because
Thank
not
you.
only is this a message that needs to get out, I think there are a lot of people who are getting it out for selfish reasons. Their research is kind of shoddy. You just click all the boxes of, to me, what makes a responsible researcher that still brings a lot of yourself going, this is what I hope for, and I think this is what's going to happen. So I deeply
Thank you.
appreciate that you're part of the conversation. We desperately need folks like you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Joey. I appreciate that.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
All right, folks. So next week we talked about portals, wormholes. This is terrific. This is terrific. So please go out and support this kind of research instead of, there's so much garbage and clickbait and nonsense out there. And I don't need to go into specifics because you all know darn well what it is. Ron, who you could see the show, hear the show every Wednesday night on Earth Radio, 10 p.m. And Ron and I did a show last Friday night. Check it out. Intermission transmission. We had a terrific time last Friday night talking about all things pirates, but it also went much more far ranging than that for a couple of hours. I said, great show, great guests. And I agree. Great guest makes for a great show. Next week, Craig and I are going to come back and we're going to talk about For Sinister Mysteries number 30. So another milestone on the show. We're going to talk about Project Pegasus, which was brought forth, probably about a decade ago by Andrew Basaggio, a program that is just stunning. It's the Montauk kind of thing. It's children being experimented on through the military. It's time travel and training programs, training our future presidents who they know they're going to be. Really tune in for that. Then the next week we're doing, as we're creeping towards 100 episodes, we are going to talk with Denny Sargent about his werewolf magic books. I did all the rituals in the fall. It was just crazy wild. It was awesome. It was just really cool. And then Craig and I will be back with Project Monarch, which is this very serious thing we're doing about the global elite and children and trafficking and slavery and mind control and horrific things that everybody needs to know about, because it paints a picture, especially with Epstein Island here. This has all been going on for a really long time. So thank you all. Thanks for staying a little longer tonight, 5 minutes anyway. And I really appreciate you. Thanks for making 4 years possible. And we'll see you next week on Into the Outer Realms, where the paranormal and the supernatural are just the normal and the natural. Peace.